History remembers kings who conquered continents, emperors who commanded vast armies, and rulers who built magnificent cities. But one man became legendary for something entirely different. His wealth. Not millions, not billions. A fortune so immense that historians struggle to calculate its true value even today. His name was Mansa Musa, the ruler of the Mali Empire in the 14th century, a kingdom so rich in gold that it controlled one of the world's greatest sources of the precious metal. Yet Mansa Musa's fame wasn't built inside his own kingdom. It was created by a single journey. In 1324, he set out on a pilgrimage to Mecca, accompanied by an enormous caravan carrying thousands of people, hundreds of camels, and vast quantities of gold. Wherever the caravan stopped, people stared in disbelief. Markets overflowed with gold. Kings welcomed him with honor. Stories of his unimaginable riches spread from city to city, crossing deserts and seas faster than the caravan itself. But then, something extraordinary happened. Mansa Musa gave away so much gold that the value of gold itself began to fall in some of the places he visited. One man's generosity had altered entire economies. More than 700 years later, historians still debate whether he was the richest person who ever lived. So who was this mysterious African king? How did he acquire such astonishing wealth? And how did one pilgrimage change the way the world saw an entire continent? To answer that, we must first journey to a powerful empire hidden beyond the vast sands of the Sahara, where rivers of gold helped build one of history's greatest civilizations. Long before European ships explored the coasts of Africa, a powerful empire flourished deep within West Africa. It was called the Mali Empire. Stretching across vast lands and connected by the great trade routes of the Sahara, Mali became one of the richest kingdoms of the medieval world. Its greatest treasure wasn't silver. It wasn't spices. It was gold. At the time, Mali controlled some of the world's richest gold fields. Gold flowed north across the Sahara, while salt, textiles, books, and other valuable goods traveled south. Merchant caravans crossed the desert for weeks, linking West Africa with the great cities of North Africa and the Middle East. The empire prospered. Its rulers grew wealthy. Its cities expanded, and commerce connected Mali to civilizations thousands of miles away. At the heart of this thriving kingdom stood Mansa Musa. He inherited not only immense wealth, but also a stable and powerful empire built by the achievements of earlier rulers. Yet Musa believed that ruling a rich kingdom was not enough. He wanted the wider world to recognize Mali as a center of power, faith, and civilization. To achieve that, he would undertake one of the most ambitious journeys of the medieval age. A journey that would carry him across the Sahara, astonish every city in his path, and make his name impossible for history to forget. By the time Mansa Musa became ruler, he already commanded one of the wealthiest empires on earth. He could have remained in his palace, surrounded by gold and luxury. Instead, he chose a far more difficult path. As a devout Muslim, Musa wished to complete the Hajj, the sacred pilgrimage to Mecca that every Muslim hopes to undertake at least once, if able. But for Musa, this would be more than a personal act of faith. It would become a journey that introduced the Mali Empire to the wider world. Preparing for the pilgrimage took months. Thousands of attendants, soldiers, officials, merchants, and servants joined the expedition. Long lines of camels were loaded with supplies, food, and enormous quantities of gold dust and gold bars. The caravan stretched for miles, becoming one of the largest ever recorded in medieval history. Crossing the Sahara would not be easy. The desert offered little mercy. Blazing heat, scarce water, and endless dunes challenged every traveler who dared to cross it. Yet the caravan moved forward. Village after village watched in amazement as an endless procession disappeared into the horizon. News of the wealthy African king spread ahead of him, long before he reached the great cities of North Africa. The world was about to witness a display of wealth unlike anything it had ever seen. But no one, not even Mansa Musa himself, could have imagined the unexpected consequences that his generosity would leave behind. After weeks of crossing the Sahara, Mansa Musa's caravan arrived in the great cities of North Africa. Wherever he traveled, the reaction was the same. Crowds gathered. Merchants stopped trading. Rulers welcomed him with extraordinary honor. People could hardly believe what they were seeing. The caravan seemed endless. Thousands of attendants walked beside richly dressed officials, while long lines of camels carried enormous amounts of gold across the desert. Chroniclers of the time described a procession so magnificent that it became the talk of the medieval world. The most unforgettable stop came in Cairo. There, Mansa Musa spent gold with remarkable generosity. He gave lavish gifts to the poor, rewarded officials, purchased goods, and donated freely wherever he went. His generosity reflected both his faith and his character, but the scale was unprecedented. So much gold entered the local economy that its value began to fall. Prices shifted, merchants struggled to adjust, and the effects were felt long after the caravan had continued toward Mecca. By the time Mansa Musa completed the Hajj, his name had spread across Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. For many people, it was the first time they realized that beyond the Sahara stood an empire of astonishing wealth and sophistication. The pilgrimage had achieved far more than its original purpose. It had placed Mali on the map of the medieval world. But Mansa Musa's greatest gift would not be the gold he gave away. It would be what he chose to bring back home. As Mansa Musa prepared to leave Cairo, the consequences of his generosity had become impossible to ignore. Gold was everywhere. So much had entered the city's markets that its value had fallen dramatically. Merchants who relied on stable prices struggled, and the local economy was disrupted. According to historical accounts, the effects lasted for years, making this one of the earliest recorded examples of a single individual influencing an entire regional economy. Mansa Musa had never intended to cause such disruption. Realizing what had happened, he made an unusual decision. Before continuing his journey, he borrowed large quantities of gold from local moneylenders, reportedly at high interest, and carried much of it out of Cairo. By reducing the amount of gold in circulation, he hoped to help stabilize the market. Whether the recovery was complete is still debated by historians. But the story itself became legendary. No ruler before him had possessed enough wealth to influence the economy of a major city simply through generosity. By the time he returned to the Mali Empire, Mansa Musa had gained something even more valuable than fame. He had seen the great centers of learning, architecture, and scholarship across the Islamic world. And he returned with a new vision. Gold had introduced the world to Mali. Now knowledge would help define its future. When Mansa Musa returned to the Mali Empire, he did not spend his wealth on greater palaces or larger armies. He invested in knowledge. Inspired by the cities he had visited during the Hajj, Musa invited architects, scholars, judges, and teachers from across the Islamic world to Mali. His goal was not simply to enrich his kingdom, but to transform it into a center of learning, culture, and faith. Nowhere was this vision more visible than in Timbuktu. Already an important trading city, Timbuktu flourished under Musa's patronage. Magnificent mosques were constructed, including the famous Jingareber Mosque, while schools and libraries attracted students from distant lands. Books became treasures. Scholars debated mathematics, astronomy, law, medicine, and theology. Merchants arrived not only with gold and salt, but with manuscripts and ideas. At its height, Timbuktu earned a reputation as one of the greatest intellectual centers of the medieval world. Mansa Musa understood something many rulers did not. Gold could make a kingdom wealthy. Knowledge could make it endure. His investments transformed Mali into far more than an economic power. It became a civilization admired for both its prosperity and its scholarship. Yet even the greatest empires cannot escape the passage of time. After Mansa Musa's death, the kingdom he had strengthened would begin to face challenges that even its immense wealth could not overcome. After Mansa Musa's death, the Mali Empire remained powerful for a time. But no empire remains at its peak forever. His successors struggled to maintain the same level of authority over such a vast territory. Regional leaders sought greater independence, trade routes gradually shifted, and rival kingdoms began competing for control of West Africa's wealth. Little by little, Mali's influence declined. Cities that had once flourished with merchants and scholars lost some of their prominence, while new powers rose to take their place. The empire that had amazed the medieval world slowly faded from global attention. Yet one thing refused to disappear: the legend of Mansa Musa. Maps drawn in Europe continued to depict a powerful African king holding a golden nugget, symbolizing the unimaginable riches said to exist beyond the Sahara. Travelers carried stories of his pilgrimage across continents, inspiring curiosity about a part of Africa that many outsiders had scarcely known. Centuries passed. Empires changed. Borders were redrawn. But the story of the king whose generosity could influence economies, and whose vision transformed a kingdom into a center of learning, continued to endure. His empire may have faded. His legend never did. And perhaps that reveals the true measure of greatness. Today, Mansa Musa is often remembered for a single extraordinary fact. Many historians believe he may have been the richest person who ever lived. But reducing his story to wealth alone misses what made him truly remarkable. Gold made him famous. Vision made him unforgettable. He used the resources of the Mali Empire not only to display power, but to build mosques, encourage scholarship, strengthen trade, and connect West Africa with the wider world. Under his rule, cities like Timbuktu became symbols of learning, attracting scholars and merchants from across Africa and beyond. His pilgrimage achieved something few journeys ever have. It changed how the world saw an entire civilization. For many outside Africa, Mansa Musa's caravan was the first undeniable proof that beyond the Sahara stood a sophisticated empire of immense wealth, culture, and learning. More than 7 centuries later, the gold he carried has long since disappeared. The kingdoms he ruled have faded into history. But the story of his pilgrimage continues to inspire historians, economists, travelers, and dreamers alike. Because true greatness is not measured by how much wealth a person accumulates. It is measured by what that wealth is used to build. Gold can fill a treasury. Gold can impress the world. But knowledge, generosity, and vision can make a legacy last forever.